This should be a lot of fun. Eclipse is a white tea. We're in the midst of a white tea session. Last week we did Comfort. This week Eclipse. Next week Gossamer Silver Needle. So there's lots to say about that, but before we jump in and start talking about that, a few of you have actually asked me to talk a little bit more about the upcoming trip in April. So I want to talk about the types of teas that we'll be seeing in April, because that will give you some sense of the scope of what we're going to do in April, even though the trip itself is relatively short. So we're going to see a red tea factory in Fujian County, and it's the second largest factory of red tea in China. This thing is enormous. In the teens, it became fully automated, and every year they make upgrades to it, and yet they also retain, for the top 4 or 5 grades, old masters to go through the final 7 or 8 steps in a handcrafted manner. So they do, except for the top 2 grades. The top 2 grades, they go through all the steps in a handcrafted manner. All the other grades, they go through an automated, semi-automated process. And then for the 3 grades after the top 2, they will do the last 7 or 8 steps by hand. So it's an incredible factory. The history of Fujian, the history not only of the tea itself, but a little bit of the county is represented beautifully in this factory. You walk through, you get a chance to see old equipment. You actually get a chance to play with some of the old equipment. It is incredible. Sometimes, in some years, they actually have the old masters available to talk to us. So we don't know, year by year, it's a little different. And this is the latest we've gone to this factory. So there's I'm sure all the old masters will be around. I don't know whether they'll be available, but that's one of the highlights from a tea perspective of what we'll be seeing. Tea perspective highlight number 2, Premier's Choice. Oh my God. How many other producers in China produce their green tea the way that Premier's Choice is produced? Not even one. There was a point in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, when the Chinese National Academy of Sciences was afraid that all the old masters would pass away and they wouldn't be able to retain this art. So they filmed it. They looked up people who hadn't passed away, who were part of the old masters, captured that information. Now, as it turned out, because China opened up in the 80s, it became profitable to go ahead and revive this technique. Quickly, in terms of other places we'll visit of extreme interest, we're going to visit one of the 4 famous Buddhist mountains. And this mountain, almost no foreigners end up here. The other 3 are more famous to Westerners. The one we're taking everybody to is the one that's famous among Chinese. So that will be a fabulous trip. Has a fabulous museum. No trip into this area is complete without at least seeing the Yellow Mountains. So for those who want to climb a little bit on the Yellow Mountains, we'll have that as a possibility, and we'll also have a place where people who don't want to climb it can rest and enjoy while those who are climbing actually climb. So that's to give you a little insights on the upcoming trip. Let's go ahead and talk about Eclipse and white tea. So let's first position ourselves within China. We're in Fujian Province, just like last week. Last week, with comfort, we were on the coast. We were in a place called Fujian. This week, we're in a city prefectural level, a prefectural level city. Ooh, I used a bunch of words. God, those sounded confusing. They are confusing if you don't understand how China is organized. So you got townships. Everybody understands what those are. I mean, Montclair is a little township, right? You have counties, similar to Alameda County. And then, in between province and county, there are what they call city, prefectural level cities. Prefectural level cities. And what those are administrative units that have a bunch of townships. The one where we're located in today is called Nanping. And that prefectural level city controls 9 townships. And this is all higher elevation. Why am I so OCD about the structure? Because sometimes if you go into a tea shop and they say, oh yeah, my white tea's from Nanping, and you think, gosh, you know, at Sophie's they don't talk about Nanping. They talk about Fujian and Zhenghe. So I'm going to put everything in perspective. Zhenghe belongs to Nanping. But the reason Nanping is called out in some shops is because there's 2 other townships where white tea is extremely important, and there's lots of lore around it. Jinyang, and I've talked about Jinyang before, because that's always in the background, one of the places where white tea could have arisen first. It certainly was being produced early. But that's not where I want to focus attention on. I want to focus attention on Sungshi. By the way, Eclipse is from Zhenghe, but I still want to talk about Sungshi a little bit because you may hear people in shops talk about, yeah, I got white tea from Sungshi. And you're thinking, they don't say that at Sophie's, so therefore, tell me more. So what's famous about Sungshi, and we've been there, but we don't have any of their white tea in here, but we understand what's famous about it. A little bit later than all these other townships, it discovered a wild growing varietal. And they used the white tea process and used this varietal. So remembering that in Zhenghe and Fujian, the buds are enormous. The leaves tend to be larger. In Sungshi, they're small. And they are heavily haired, the little white trichomes. So it's small and heavily trichomed. So, and that's why I'm introducing you to Nanping, because if somebody says Nanping and you shake your head because it's like, well, it's not Fujian and Zhenghe. Zhenghe is part of Nanping. Fujian is not. It's a separate area close to the coast. So just more information for you today. So let's go to where Eclipse is produced and let's talk about what's special in the terroir. The most special thing about the terroir of Eclipse is this higher elevation. And in a minute, I'll tie to higher elevation something that you shall understand with white tea. In general, and let's define high elevation so you all know where we are. We're about 6,000 feet above sea level. In 5,000 to 6,000 feet. In general, when doing white tea, if it's being produced at a higher elevation, the tendency is for that white tea to have more aromatics to it. Hands down. So that's one of the things to understand about today's tea. The actual place where today's tea is harvested is actually 50 miles away from the center of Zhenghe. So it really isn't in Zhenghe proper. It kind of lies in between a couple townships, but it is at a very good Zhenghe farm produced. Goes through normal production, and in Zhenghe, particularly where we get it, remembering that what normal production means is different than Fuding. And it's different because it's completely sun-dried. And that's what makes most of the Fuding teas, I said Fuding, I meant Zhenghe teas, stand out, because there's a different feel to those than there is to Fuding. And there's a different flavor profile that results from being completely sun-dried. Now, last week, I also promised we'd talk a little bit about alleged health benefits. And I do want to dig into this subject a little bit, because white tea in China, and now starting here, you start to see customers come in and say, hey, I heard white tea is really good for you. Well, that's a loaded statement. It is really good for you, but you could say that loaded statement about all the teas. So let's analyze from a TCM perspective, traditional Chinese medicine perspective, and see what they say. What they say is that white tea is highly cooling. Now, does this mean when it's 100 degrees outside, you drink hot white tea and all of a sudden, oh God, I'm freezing. It's like Siberia in here. No, that's not the cooling they're referring to. In fact, over the years, the Chinese population has come to equate, well, you ought to drink white tea during the summer and less of it during the winter. There are reasons for that, but they happen to match what TCM is really addressing, which is inflammation. So when they say white tea is highly cooling, they're talking it's highly anti-inflammatory. So last week you also heard me talk about aged white tea versus white tea that's monoclonally grown. You know, the plantation style of white tea. So which one is going to be more cooling? It's going to be the monoclonally grown. So if you go out there and think of this, even take humans as an analogy. Who among humans is the most energetic? It's the young ones, right? Who among humans are the most mellow? Generally speaking, it's older, experienced. So tea is the same thing. The energy, the anti-inflammatory energy is most vivid, most pronounced within the monoclonal. However, which one is the human body most likely to benefit from? It's from the cooled down, the older tea, the aged tea. The human body seems to be able to absorb that better. That doesn't mean that young white tea, the monoclonally grown, just picked white tea, isn't great. It is great. But in a way, think of any medicine. So some dosage of any medicine that's been approved is, in quotes, good for you, right? Or let's not say good for you. Let's say instead it has an ideal working level within you. Not necessarily good for you, but it's ideally meeting what it's supposed to do. Now, if it's ideally meeting what it's supposed to do, what if I double the dosage? If I double the dosage, will I get double the ideal that I'm supposed to be getting? And the answer is no. And so now move that analogy over to what I'm talking about with white tea, and you'll understand why it's the aged white tea which has become wildly expensive and wildly popular. Because what they're finding, and we're talking about scientists, we're talking about TCM practitioners, and so what sorts of things is this tea helping with? Well, how about blood sugar levels? How about blood pressure? How about skin conditions? For eczemas in this area, many people use the aged white tea. They don't use the stuff that's just been picked. Too strong, too directed. It doesn't get the job done. But the aged stuff works just fine, and it works really great with the body. And hence, I talked about how out of this world expensive aged tea has become. Let me give you examples. We have several aged white teas here, but the example I'm going to point out today, because this one we have a direct comparison in Shanghai. So we sell a cake, 357 grams of Enemy's Demise, picked in 2011, and that cake goes for $680 here in Montclair Village. What does it go for in Shanghai? We checked last night, and it's going for $2,400 a cake. Why is there such a big discrepancy? Well, the one reason is we're not good business people. We should be selling it to Shanghai, because they'd buy all of it if we allowed them to. But the real, on a serious note, the real reason that there's this big discrepancy is China realizes, because they use this on a regular basis, particularly for things related to heart health, anti-cancer, anti-radiation. You see this in the literature. In the TCM literature, you see it over and over and over again. In the studies, so, you know, we're all Westerners, we're scientists. We like real science, right? We don't want, you know, traditional science. We like real science. So real scientists are working on this and producing results which again seem to support the control of blood sugar, good for people who have diabetes, good for high blood pressure. So let's not get confused, because I don't want anyone to say, oh, well, this cures all these conditions. That's not what I said. What I'm saying is evidence in scientific experiments, evidence at the TCM level indicates that there seems to be some benefit. And it's an accumulated benefit, particularly from aged white tea. Do you get a benefit from the unaged, from the baby white tea? Yeah, you get a benefit. Is it the same as the aged? No, apparently not. So if I were asked, okay, what white tea should I take if I have, for example, a pulled muscle or a knee that's bothering me? You should probably do the monoclonal growing, the newer stuff. But anything that's chronic, you should probably think about the aged stuff, or anything that affects the immune system, you should probably think about the aged stuff. So this is what current state of traditional Chinese medicine says in China. This is what scientists continue to work on in China and actually in other places as well. This is what the cosmetics industry really knows, because they put white tea extract in so many of the high-end cosmetics. That's not an accident. They're finding that there is some sort of benefit associated with that. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today about that, because there's lots of research on this, and I want to make sure that you're getting a chance to think about this. All right, I think, yeah, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Bijou to come up here and demonstrate how to brew Eclipse. You're in for if you haven't had Eclipse before, you're in for a great surprise. Remembering it's like a miniature spring tribute. In other words, very few buds, mostly leaves. So it gives me incredibly great pleasure to bring forth Bijou, Tea Master. Move forward.
Hi, everyone. I can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
I heard you.
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. 早上好. We do white tea. It's Eclipse, but this is organic certified.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, yeah. USDA certified organic, yes.
Yeah, let's introduce. Okay, so this.
So you look at her tableau.
Yeah.
So a tray, 2 cups, a strainer, and water. We have a water tower, and she's going to draw 170-degree water and rinse the cups. The brewing time for the first steeping is 3 minutes. And you notice making sure that both cups are heated, rinsed. These cups come to this tray clean, but you never know if something's been missed. So we do this kind of, and you should in your practice, as a final step before you actually go ahead and brew. She's drawing the water, aerating it. And she's going to get the leaves. You get a chance to see the leaves. Make sure that the cup is ready to receive them. shakes, trying to distribute heat among the leaves. And why does she pour back into this kettle? Because it's got a neck. And so therefore she can contain the, she can direct where the pour is actually going to go.
A question, can you talk about the color of these leaves as compared to, say, silver needle, and how the processing affects it?
That's a great question. So this is a question about the color of the leaves compared to silver needle. So last week when we did comfort, you noticed that it was a light green with lots of trichomes on it, and so much, much lighter than what you're looking at today. Remembering that just a few minutes ago I said this is like an equivalent pick of spring tribute. So almost no buds, it's really the leaves. And so the real question here that should be suggested by your question is, are these leaves monoclonal leaves, or are they leaves that you've had for a while? Now, if they were monoclonal leaves, what would you expect to see? Much more green, but not with the white hair that you had with comfort. But you would see it to be greener. These are aged leaves. I think these are about 9 years old, 9 or 10 years old. And so as the leaves age, year by year, what happens? Slight bit of oxidation, the colors darken slightly year by year. And so you can tell right away by looking at these, because when you look at them, some of the leaves almost seem like they're red tea, because they've oxidized. They all oxidize at different rates, don't they? And that's why you see a color difference in the leaves. Great question. And this, by the way, will always let you know, regardless of what the person who's selling you the tea leaves tells you, color matters. And the very, very fresh color that you saw last week indicates it's younger. It's got that vigor. The color of maturity, the color of age. Yes?
And so White Thunder and Taoist Eyebrows are both aged teas for that reason also?
Oh, absolutely. Great follow-up. White Thunder and Taoist Eyebrows, based upon what I just said, must be very old. And that would be a correct assumption. White Thunder is about 12 or 13 years old. Taoist Eyebrows is about 11 or 12 years old. So great catch on that. It's really the leaves tell the story in so many different ways. As you get used to what you're looking at, it becomes incredible, because it's like, oh my God, all right, I guess it's going to be one way, and it actually is one way. I know how to read the tea leaves. Timer's gone off. The tea master separates the leaves from the tea water, and we're left with this color. So I'm going to help you here. A white tea that comes out as this color, let's look at this a little bit more carefully. It almost looks like it could be one of our red teas, doesn't it? So this is another clue to age of the tea leaves. As they age and take on color in the leaves themselves, what they produce also takes on color. All right, we're going to enter the quality arena. This is done at 175 degrees, so we can take a 175 degree sip. I will do that. I'm looking for astringency, I'm looking for aftertaste, and I'm looking for energetics. And you know what? I'm not going to tell you what I find with energetics. You're going to tell me what I should find or what you actually do find. Okay. Wow. I'm getting that initial reading with astringency. Yes, I have an aftertaste. I'm going to take a second one of these and determine what's the aroma and what's the flavor and verify what I just detected.
Just a question, how old is Enemy's Demise compared to these other aged teas you mentioned?
Oh, great question. So if I really want to get rid of an enemy and really want to, make sure that the enemy stays subdued, should I be drinking something like this or should I drink Enemy's Demise? From an age perspective, Enemy's Demise is about 15 years old. It's the elder statesman of what we have. This one, I think it's 8 or 9 years old. The White Thunder is about 12 years old. So that kind of gives you a feel for where everybody stands. Okay, I took a second sip. It's now time for you to brew. Okay, and yours are in bag number 2. And it's listed as Eclipse. So you have your equipment out. You have your water ready. Timer is already there. The other thing, and this is anecdotal, you can always find reasons to support beliefs. And so it's very funny, when we're in this region of China, I think we've met more ancient tea pickers than anywhere else in China. So we met a gentleman who said he's 103. He still goes out and picks. We met a couple women who said that they were in their 90s. They're out there picking. And of course, you ask them, well, how come you're living so long? Oh, it's the tea. I drink this tea every day. So that's anecdotal. That's not scientific. But it is interesting because you don't usually see people of that age picking tea. Tea is hard work. Yeah.
Somebody got very excited about white tea and started brewing early and noted that the wet leaves smell like chocolate-covered cherries.
Ooh, I love chocolate-covered cherries. And I also love the fact that you're detecting aromatics with this. This was the wet leaves, right? Yeah. Fair enough. I'm on board with that, particularly if you had reversed it and said cherries as a leading covered in chocolate. I am really all on board with that because for me, that fruity / something else, and you're going to tell me that something else, really stands out. All right, you poured the water in, you set your timer for 3 minutes. Is there something else? Okay, all right. And as we go through this process, the other thing I want to tell you about this is these farms, they're not that large. They're larger than the typical cliff tea farm. They're about double the size, but that's still small. Half acre, 1 acre. And so you have the same situation, particularly in the Nanping area, that you have in the Wui Mountains itself. And that is that the farms are pretty small, and farmers have several farms, and they're in different locations. So just like with cliff teas, these farmers over the years have started their blend from or by location. What's incredible is the amount of how valuable these tea leaves have become in recent years. So these are selling in the hundreds of dollars versus the pennies just as short a time as 25 years ago. When we first looked at white tea, and that was 25 years ago, we could get that truly for a very small fraction of anything. And by the way, the production levels were under 1% of the total crop. As science, the lore of traditional Chinese medicine, and research studies have caught up, the production has increased. And farmers since about 2000, I want to say in 2015 was the magic year that all of a sudden we saw all these farmers rebuilding huge places. One of the farmers built this huge museum. It's incredible. Okay, yours should be close. Oh, it is close.
And have you noticed in that higher production areas or farmers who were not producing white tea before are now making white tea with their crops?
Great question. Love this question. The questioner says, have we noticed how smart farmers are? And the absolute answer to that is yes, we have, because farmers have supplanted red tea growing areas with white tea because they're making more money with the white tea. That is a great catch. All right, your timer should have gone off. And you should have something which looks very different than what you had last week. And let's go ahead and enter the quality arena.
So, commenter, I'd guess from the color it was a red tea. I'd guess from the aroma it was a red tea. I doubled down on that assessment after the first sip. There goes my tea shop ranking.
I have to guess this is Peter. I love that you put it that way, because we have had more than one person come in the shop and with the request, surprise me. And we put a tea on their thing and they look at it, oh yeah, I'm not surprised at all. This is a red tea. And you know, they take that initial tea, yeah, this is really a red tea. And then they're surprised. And why do they end up being surprised? Because usually there's something else that goes along with this that might not necessarily go along with red tea. I'm not going to say it because one of you will end up saying it. Great comment though. Your ranking is still preserved though. See, this is the type of tea that if you were wondering, you're going to have an afternoon event and you're thinking, God, I don't know whether my audience can do green tea. I don't know whether my audience can do, you know, cliff teas. Are they mature enough to do cliff teas? And you're thinking, what? These are strangers. What should I give them? You can never go wrong with giving them something like this, because it covers such a wide range of possibilities. So people who like red tea will say, oh gosh, nice choice. People who like the calmness of white tea, wow, what a great choice. It's not white tea, but what a great choice. And by the way, I'm going to take a digression here while you're thinking about, and keep thinking about what you're drinking here. And remember to take notes, because the best thing, and your questions have already shown me that you're taking notes, particularly that question about the color of the silver needle versus the color of this. So comparing last week's to this, yeah, you're taking good notes. So my digression is, one year we were in the white tea Nanping growing area, and we were in a hurry, the familiar story, because we were always trying to do a lot, and even though we're there for so long, it's still, we're busy every day, moving every day. And we stopped at one of the farmers, had his tea, liked it, and said, okay, put aside some of that for us. And he said, so I have one more. And it's like, this better be real good, because, you know, we're trying to make schedule. You'll love this stuff. And we had it, and it was so sweet. I did a double take, because it's like he had put stevia in it. It was that sweet. And this was years ago, and we actually did end up getting that tea, which, by the way, never made it to the boards, because through a mishap in communication, we got some, but we didn't get the amount. And then when I went for the second year, it wasn't that same sweetness. Yes?
The evolution of the aroma is mind-blowing. The warmed leaves had hints of malt, umami, and a grassy smell that I associate with horses. The steeped leaves have a gentle florality, and the tea water has a cider-like cherry florality.
Love this comment. Tea water, cider-like cherry and florality. The florality is a main theme, whether it's cherry florality, whatever florality it is, it's there. The warm leaves hint of, can you go through that again? I think hay was part of it.
So it was a malt, umami, and grassy.
That's right. Malt, umami, grassy, and
then you have the steep leaves that have a gentle floral sense, and then the tea water is cider-like with cherry and floral.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So look at that malt umami from the warm tea leaves all the way to that floral cherry in the tea water. Just a great range, and that's what's so surprising about this tea. It is a humble tea, it really is, and yet it's got all of these qualities. And remember, you all presumably are thinking about the energetics, because at some point I want to hear about those too.
Still on, not energetics yet, but the scent of orange blossom on top of a syrupy honey base. On the taste, the orange blossom tang stays heavy on top while the honey fades back.
Oh, I love this. Orange blossom on top of a honey, and then as you get into the actual tea water itself, the honey recedes, and that the tanginess of an orange blossom comes to the fore. You're getting it. You're absolutely getting it, because there is sweetness, but it's not the dominant. It's that floral, and I like the fact that you were brave enough to use the word tangy. Normally, I wouldn't quite go that far, but for this, it absolutely works. Great, great catch.
Comment on the coating of the tongue, and very smooth and sweet.
Smooth and sweet coating on the tongue. Is it ever? It really, for me at any rate, coats the tongue. And yeah, smooth, no question. Sweet, no question.
And another echo vote for cider-like cherry florality also lands for this person.
Oh, I like this, that we're all settling on that cherry florality. And that's something, as you see, if you had asked me before you all started commenting, I wouldn't have modified florality with cherry. But as soon as the first of you did that, it's like, Oh my gosh, of course that's right. And yes, I can use that now because you put words to something that was always there. I just never grokked it because to me, that cherry is subtle. The florality is more of a leading. But to try and describe it, I didn't quite have the words. You've given them to me.
There's an astringency on the front top of my tongue that is showing up as I drink deeper into the cup.
So this person talks about astringency and is detecting the astringency both the same and different than I am. Top of the tongue, yes, I detect that. For me, I detected it right away, and for me, it was heavier. For this individual, seems that it's a bit lighter. And that's fine. Remember, we're all genomically different.
I'm experiencing a surprising and lovely warming effect.
Ah, energetics. We're getting around to proof that this is aged. A surprising warming effect. Oh my God. You wait until you've had 3 more minutes with this. It's going to be heavy heat effect. So, we talked at the opening about cooling. It is cooling from anti-inflammatory, but from the effect of you, say you're on a cold day, I want to get warmer, you can drink this tea and you will get warmer. You will have that energetic. Remember, the warming is coming from the fact it's aged. Have you had one aged tea in here that isn't warming? I'll shortcut this. You haven't. All of them. And I know I keep getting the question, why is that the case? I don't have the scientific words to put to you, but I continue to look for those because there's some set of combination compounds that creates this warming, and it's just the most comfortable. It's like on a cold day, it's like putting that sweater on and feeling, oh yeah, now I'm feeling good. Great catch.
While this may not be enemy's demise, it could be at least enemy stays home.
I love this comment. So this commentator is obviously very familiar with my thinking pattern and the teas in here, and states, it's not enemy's demise, but it's certainly enemies stay home. Love that comment. Great comment.
Well, he's saved his ranking, but Peter's still having a difficult time coming around the fact that this is a white tea. If this wasn't endorsed by Sophie's as a white, I'd be carrying around doubts.
Hey, I love this comment because it is proper unless a proprietor can tell you why you're experiencing these differences to have doubts, because this just doesn't have the feel, the normal feel of a young white tea. And so if somebody who doesn't or hasn't been to China or doesn't really know the business says, oh yeah, this is a young white tea, and don't worry about all the counter indications, it's white tea. They're sure it's white tea because their agent brought it to them. They don't know the age. They don't know that white tea ages and has this type of result. I get it. All right. Oh, good. We're doing just fine. I love these sessions. And I love these sessions because there's so many surprises that in our day-to-day life at Sophie's, we don't talk a lot about. We come in here, we have community, we enjoy, we do our work, we do all the things we do, but we don't necessarily be present with the tea. When we're present with the tea, the beauty of these things comes to the fore. And the fact that I'm dealing with the 1%ers, oh my God, it's just not normal beauty. This is celestial beauty, which is described. Cherry florality. I take that away from this session. Next week, we're going to go back to the needle. That doesn't sound good. Whoops. Next week, we're going to do gossamer silver needle. Your responsibilities this week are to stay off the needle, be healthy. We'll see you next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.